Well, joining me now live is David Elliot, New South Wales Police and Emergency Services Minister. Minister, Happy New Year to you. Were people generally abiding by the call to stay home this time round?
Yeah, they were. I'm pretty happy with the briefing I've had this morning about the overnight activity. We had 12 COVID-related charges or infringement notices issued, which in my mind is still too many. We've had days in the last week where there's only been 2, or indeed there's been days where there's only been none. And 219 people were charged with 290 offences. So overall, that's a sort of a busy Saturday night. But for New Year's Eve, that's pretty good, and police are quite happy with the compliance.
And what were these charges mainly for? Was it in terms of breaching the public health order for mass gatherings?
Well, the 12 infringement notices for COVID-related were a breaching of the public health orders, but the 290 charges were a range of things. They were offences relating to violence, failure to quit, and a few driving related offences. So that's not, in my mind, it's not acceptable. But it's so far as from a statistical point of view, it's quite a normal evening on a weekend.
And in terms of the mass gatherings, were there any massive parties that needed to be broken up?
Yeah, there were a couple, but not many. There was one in Villawood, I think, and there was one in on the Central Coast. But the Villawood one was the one that concerned the police the most, and that related to fireworks and a gathering of a couple of hundred people. So that will be dealt with, and police will have those any offenders before the court as quickly as they can.
We do know that in the CBD or in and around, only those with a pass were able to enter. How did police go with that? Were there people that were trying to enter, or were they moved on quickly?
No. In fact, the CBD, the police are telling me, was quite compliant, and I went into the operations centre last night to meet the people that were working there, and the crowds were well down. In fact, it was a very, very quiet night in the CBD in the city, and that I think was a reflection of not only the warnings that the government issued. I think that says to me that people are 99% compliant. I think there's a high level of concern in the community about any breaches, but of course it also reflected the weather. So the weather worked in our favour for the first time in a long time, I can tell you.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a real blessing in disguise this time around. Minister, we saw yesterday Victoria and South Australia, or as of midnight, they closed their borders to New South Wales. Do you think that was the right decision?
No, I'm actually quite personally disappointed, and I know the Premier is always reluctant to allow border closures. We only closed the border with Victoria when we were in the hundreds, and we went from 18 to 10 yesterday. I don't know what the figures will be this morning. The Premier will announce them in due course, but I actually think the other premiers are being a little bit premature when it comes to closures, particularly when it comes to New South Wales. They're not taking into consideration the population and the percentage of people that are actually taking that are being diagnosed with COVID-19. So I'd like to see them opened as soon as possible. Now, no one begrudges Stephen Marshall for wanting to keep his community safe, and I think it's quite admirable. But I think we need to make sure that we put it all into proportion. We are a nation. We're not a collection of nation states. And when we consider how well the airlines have been managing their COVID-19 obligations, I think that it's pretty. I think we're doing okay when it comes to managing transmissions in travel. So, but the other states want to close down. That's fine. New South Wales tourism will benefit from that. And the call from the Premier has always been this summer, holiday at home.
What do you say to those who have accused New South Wales of not going hard enough in its response to the outbreaks?
Well, it's ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous to suggest that we haven't done enough or gone hard enough. I mean, New South Wales around the world, and I got texts from international colleagues around the Commonwealth overnight, and we're seen in this state as being the world's best practice. When you see in the United Kingdom 50,000 people in one day being diagnosed, when you're seeing the United States, and they're the nations that are actually honest with their COVID-19 statistics. I mean, if you talk to the Central and Eastern Europe and Africa and Asia and the Chinese, I mean, we were actually very, very honest with our stats, and we have to be, because that's what a democratic nation does with its electorate. But I think we've done very, very well. Anybody that suggests that we haven't gone hard enough, anybody suggests that we haven't managed it well, anybody suggests that we aren't the world's best practice, clearly are misinformed.
Victoria's only recorded several cases so far in Melbourne, and yesterday they already mandated masks for indoor use. Why is New South Wales not following suit?
Oh, I think that Dan Andrews is very concerned about a repeat of what the disaster was earlier in last year, in the middle of last year. I mean, I'm no fan of the way that the Victorians managed the outbreak in the middle of the year, and their own internal reviews have condemned the government's response to that. I'm quite convinced that what we've seen out of Dan Andrews and the Victorian Labor government down there has actually been just a response to the fact that they don't want to go through the trauma that they caused in the electorate last year.
Just finally, Minister, I want to ask you, the words of the national anthem have been changed overnight. Do you support the changes?
Yeah, I do, and I've always been a great supporter of making sure that whether it be symbolic or practical, we always walk towards the reconciliation. And I'm a right-wing Liberal. I'm probably one of the more conservative Liberals in certainly the New South Wales Parliament, if not the party in general. And I think that if these symbolic gestures are going to go another step towards reconciliation, well, then I'm all for it. I've also been a great fan of making sure Indigenous Australians just embrace modern Australia, and let's not. We will never be able to solve or apologise or reconcile the errors of the past. Some of them are too tragic, some of them are too traumatic. But I think the Prime Minister and Gladys Berejiklian are on the right track with the national anthem. I think that because we're not a young nation. I mean, we go around, and as an MP, I go around boasting about the fact that that Aboriginal Australia is the longest and oldest culture in the world. I mean, it outdates the pyramids, so that we're not young and we actually aren't young and free. We're an old nation, and let's be proud about that. We've got some very, very historic cultures that are practiced in Australia at the moment, and I think that by saying that we're one instead of young is more than appropriate when it comes to our national anthem.
Minister David Elliot, appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.